Hello, my name is Jessica Gray, and today I will be presenting my oral exam for advanced criminological theories. Today I will be explaining the theories, giving a real life world example, as well as explaining why it matters. I will first explain the Marxist theory, which, in reference to our book, is from chapter 11. The Marxist theory is the theory that society is defined by the struggles. Um, the more struggles, the lower the class. So, a lot of times, the working class endures more struggles than those who have money and more power. Karl Marx is the founder of this theory, and he talks about bourgeoisie, which is the healthy capital class. And this refers to the Marx theory because they are the ruling class, which means they have power over all classes beneath them. This theory also takes the perspective that crime is a response to the structural injustice of the system, which makes it to where those who have lower means, lower income, it gives them structural injustice, which a lot of times can lead to committing crimes because they feel as if they have no other way to survive. This theory also talks about the means of production. A lot of times, the means of production is controlled by those who are wealthy in capitalism. So, a lot of times, or the capitalist class, a lot of times, without these factories, these businesses, they would not be able to. They would not be able to operate smoothly. They would not be able to bring in the money they do bring in without the working class. Um, Essentially because, say a factory, say the richer you are, the higher up you get become and can get in a company. So a lot of times the working class is the class that is made to stay in the same environment they were born in, raised in, and that most likely their kids will be raised in because the means of production is kept going, kept moving by this working class. This theory also shows that the rich and the wealthy are nothing without the workers. The workers almost set the foundation for what supports this theory because without people to work and keep these things going, there's no production made. The economic system makes it to where the majority has to work while the minority, which would be the rich and wealthy, are in control, forcing the minority and the working class to continue to keep working and stuck in what has been the working class for a very long time. A lot of times, crime is caused by the massive wealth inequality, meaning there are less rich people and more poor people. A real world example that I immediately thought of is our president and how our president is obviously a very rich and wealthy man. And without us voting for him, without using propaganda and things to lure in the lower class, he would not continue to be rich. He would not continue to be able to be president without our votes, without us continuing to be working. The other term I want to talk about is radical criminology, which is um, this argues that crime cannot be solved without the reconstruction of the entire economic system because of the large amount of inequality that leads to crime. Another example or another part of Marxism is the part of instrumental, which protects the long-term interest of capitalism, and it doesn't necessarily benefit the lower class or the working class. Another reason why this theory itself matters is because the economic power that is put into play shapes the law. It shapes how minor crimes are prosecuted in the eyes of the law, and the crime enforcement that is placed on those in lower classes versus those in higher classes shows the class priorities and how it's prioritized that the working class stays at the working class level. A lot of times, gang or street crimes are prosecuted very heavily and very seriously, whereas someone who makes a corporate type of crime or say the rich, someone that is rich in power or rich with wealth are not prosecuted the same way someone who does not have that status is prosecuted, making it unfair and showing us how economic power shapes the law. Another theory that I want to talk about is from Chapter 8 in our Advanced Chronological Theories book, and that is the social disorganization theory. And that theory was founded by Saul and McKay. And what this theory identifies is the idea that certain neighborhoods have high levels of crime due to the lack of social order, such as community, family, good schools, and it essentially the kids, especially turning to delinquency, are essentially what their community is. So the environment around them is essentially what they become because they don't know any different. They don't know anything else besides what they have grown up in. So like I said, an example of this would be say a child has shown signs of delinquent behavior and has started hanging around gangs or people that were delinquents themselves, and it's almost praised in some communities and accepted. So therefore, this it's continuously passed down and made okay by parents and communities. Theory also supports the fact that crime is linked to poverty, instability, and weak institutions. So, like I was referencing before, a lot of neighborhoods that do not have the financial means, they work low-income jobs. They don't have the best schools. They don't have the best education. They don't have the best family support. A lot of them are on government assistance. So, like I said, they kind of become what their environment is, and theory also explains crime beyond personality. So essentially, what's happening is the crime is concentrated in areas of concentrated disadvantages. So most residents in these areas say an area like Chicago. Um, they don't have control of their area. Well, certain parts of Chicago, not all of Chicago, say a bad part of Chicago, where it's low income, gang presence is very heavy. The people in that community that maybe even want to change, they don't have the power to control or change that because the lack of money, the lack of social order. Whereas if they were in a different community, where it was okay to say, hey, that's not right, or they were had more social cohesion and the willingness to intervene, they could stop the delinquency right at the source. But in a lot of these communities, that's not socially acceptable, and it would not look good in their presence. So this theory also is supporting the fact that if you have a strong community, there will be lower violence. So it's saying that the lack of community in an environment is what leads to crime. Another theory that I wanted to talk about is from chapter 13 in our Advanced Chronological Theories book, and that is the feminist theory, which emerged in the 1970s. And was founded by Carl Smart, and this theory basically has the point of view that patriarchy has dominated the economic laws and values, and it has dominated the power structure. This theory matters because it shows how after the period of oppression, when women started questioning the facts of inequality in jobs, inequality in laws, and how we were treated, the crime rates of women actually went up. So it was almost as if the way that they took it was in a completely misconstrued way because they didn't actually look at the problem. They just added and were more aggressive from a police and law point of view against women. This theory also shows and proves that men have met the structure of the economy is made for men. The laws are more so made for men. Workplaces are structured for men, which bounces back off the fact that the patriarchy is is a male dominated response. There are three theories of this, one being radical feminism, Marxist, intersectional, and liberal. So the radical theory of from the feminist theory views patriarchy as the root cause of oppression against women. So the social structures in the economy and life in general is set up for men, not women, which makes it hard for women to climb corporate ladders, to get out of the working class, and to do more because it's not set up that way. The liberal perspective of the feminist theory is achieving all these things through legal and political reforms. Also, the Marxist theory also, or the Marxist theory in addition, also targets the capitalism structure that is set up for men. The Marxism is tied to the economic exploitation and division of labor. So a lot of times men have more opportunities than women when it comes to working, when it comes to getting careers, because like I said, everything has been set up for men, not women. Um, Police also like I said, treated women differently after the oppression. And the intersectional feminism is basically the liberal, radical, and Marxist all combined. So it looks at every single one of these views and tells us how women are treated differently. A real world example of this is, say, a woman is in a domestic violence situation. A lot of times, in a domestic violence situation, women feel as if they don't have a way out. They don't have a way to get away from their partner. So a lot of times, or not a lot of times, but sometimes women will take it into um, their own hands and say it was a way for them to get out, and the man was hurt or possibly killed, or along those means the woman is prosecuted as a criminal. She's looked at as a criminal. Most of the time, the abuse, the mental abuse, physical abuse is not taken into consideration at all. And she is just simply treated as a criminal, especially for those who have been sex trafficked. They are charged with prostitution when they were forced into prostitution to begin with and sex trafficked. That being said, the feminist theory supports the fact that abused women are not taken into consideration, and a lot of times they are just seen as criminals. The theory I want to talk about is the enemy theory. and the strain theory, and those two theories are from chapter 9. Um, Words, um, how people stay normal during rapid change. Society can lead people to have lack of social regulation, and how when you don't have social regulation, it does something to your mental health. And it is said in the book that it can lead to suicide or suicidal thoughts, because the area of your brain that needs social regulation, needs some type of interaction with others, it's deprived from that. So it leads people to no other choice but to feeling like they can't be here anymore. And tells us about how innovation is the illegal adaptation to blocked opportunity. An example of this theory is how the American dream is portrayed and put out there, but ultimately we don't. A lot of times, the working class or the lower class does not have the means to support the American dream. So, a lot of times, trying to get to that, it's almost impossible, because when the American dream is set up by those who are in power, those who have money and are wealthy, and those who are the working class, they don't have the means to support that at all. Also want to add that the school systems, the justice systems, they're not set up in a way that we are able to easily access the American dream, like like say people from other countries would maybe think, or people would think, but we don't have the means to do so. In general, another portion of this, the general strain theory, is the theory that was later adopted by Robert K. Morton, and from the anomie theory, that disassociation between cultural and society means can also lead to suicide. What added to this theory is that when you have the means, and when you want something and you see others with it, but you can't necessarily get it, sometimes or you're in an environment where you can't get it, a lot of times it leads to anger, which could possibly lead to crimes. A real world example that I thought of would be something along the lines of seeing other people who um, are rich, and you just have that financial pressure to get those things. So a lot of times you see people stealing, you see people committing fraud, you see people just trying to keep up with what's portrayed by society, what's portrayed by the media. But we're put in an environment where we don't have the access that's that everyone, or not everyone else, but the minority has access to. The majority does not have access to these means, and just the way that the media and politicians and things make it look, it's not easy, because we don't have those same opportunities because of the environment that we are in, which is made and placed by those who are in control. The term I want to talk about as well is from chapter 11, and it is the critical criminology theory, which challenges the stigma of crime being committed due to race, class, gender, or power and classes, as such things as like how you were brought up, the environment you were brought in. I also want to add that those who are in power can make laws that will essentially keep the lower class in the lower class by um, disproportionately targeting marginalized communities, such as um, those who are in the lower class, different ethnical groups. It challenges how the fact that these laws were directly put into place to attack Black communities and minority communities. This matters because this happens a lot, even in current day. And a lot of times these laws are put into place to, like I said, simply attack the minority to keep the minority in, or the majority of people that are poor to keep them in that same place, or the people that are in lower class, or the people that don't have the resources that those who are rich and empowered do. Um, a good example of this is how, again, those who are charged and become prosecuted, it's disproportionate because a lot of times those who have money and power are not treated the same as those who um, have a different skin color or are um, based and judged off of their appearance. So a lot of times what this does is attacks those communities, like I said, to keep them in the same position they're in. Essentially, a lot of laws are made so that um, Black communities and the minorities can constantly be prosecuted and accused of crimes, whereas if the rich and powerful were accused of these same crimes, it would not be the same outcome. Theory I want to talk about is the conflict theory from chapter 10, I believe. Um, what this theory does is it challenges and shows us how the social nature of a crime can be the product of a conflict between groups with the same interests. Gold is the founder of this theory, and he makes a point that the laws reflect group conflict. So these laws were put into place so that the people you are around, say whether that's gangs, whether that's family, whether that's community, where you can have conflict with one another. That way, it's essentially um, making you become a criminal offender against one another, and it's keeping you in that same position. So he has a theory that these laws and theories were put into place so that they were not able to excel or exceed the environment that they were in. Also talks about the theory that um, crime is the product of the environment, so that it almost, what it does is it rinses and repeats itself. So an example of this would be something like how um drug laws are interpreted as to keep a community safe or to keep society safe and the environment safe, but in reality, it's so lawmakers can have social control over an environment because it's basically meant to divide a community, divide an environment. Because, say, if someone has marijuana or drugs and they know that that person is the dealer, or they know that, oh well, that's person, it's gonna divide the community, because some are gonna look at it as, oh, it's ruining the community. It could be drug deals gone wrong, leading to murder and offenses, leading to um like I said, just becoming an offender, being caught, and allowing the lawmakers and essentially the prosecutors to be able to prosecute, because it's not necessarily in the hands of the judge, it's in the hands of the prosecutor, because um, they are able to charge individuals with committing crimes that seem to be to protect the community, but essentially it is just to um, have social control over these groups. William Graham Sumner also talks about this theory and how um, um, social control over. these marginalized communities instead of keeping these communities safe like they put out to be or what they that's what they want it to look like they and it also insinuates um, the crime based on skin color. So a lot of time a real world example would be a police officer racially profiling someone in a traffic stop, such as like because say if someone well we've seen it in the media. An example could be George Floyd or those who have been abused by cops simply because of their skin color and what society has already put in the heads of these officers, not all, but some, um, making it where if you pull someone over, they're already insinuating, thinking, "Oh, he could have weed in the car. He could have marijuana or something along those lines in the car." Um, the cop can imply that and take him out of the car, do a search in based off of a smell that may or may not be there. Um, and a lot of times, or sometimes they may find nothing, and that would be an example of racially profiling because based off of the cop's nature and what he thinks based off of the profiling led to what could have been an arrest or what could not have been an arrest. In conclusion, what I have learned from these chapters is that crime is shaped by inequality in communities, inequality in how the justice system is shaped, and the structure of it. The structure of it is essentially made for um, lower income communities to fail and continue to commit crimes that are made by the justice system. So, um, to go back over the Marxist theory, explains why these opportunities are blocked because they do not have the same access as those who are in power do. Social disorganization theory shows how inequality is concentrated in neighborhoods. So the communities are essentially made to continue to fail so that they can stay and continue to work for the higher class. To circle back on that, feminist theory, it just um, shows how the laws and nature is simply structured by men, and it shows how power is gendered to specifically only one gender. It shows us that the community or the conditions of a community matters as well as how law reflects power differences. So, um, a lot of times the law is power and the law has power over these communities and the means to make them offend. Um, what reading this and what this class did for me, um, especially as far as my journey to moving to the criminal justice side, um, well, for one, it shows how people are put in positions to offend so that when someone offends, you have to look at who committed the crime, who's in power when this crime was committed. Not saying that that is the only means to it, but like I said, a lot of times these people are put in positions to specifically continue to offend and commit crimes and be prosecuted to keep those in power. Because if we realize that the laws were made for us to continue to offend, to continue to stay in the same spots, then those in power would be in trouble. So instead of asking who committed the crime, again, we have to ask who has power, who defines crime, and whose harm gets ignored. So a lot of times we have to look at victims and when they are harmed, why are they placed in a position to be prosecuted instead of being defended? That means that I now see how crime is connected to structure, class, gender, as well as power.